Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So tonight we are going to be going through estate planning, 6 things to make sure that you have a plan in place. And first, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time tonight to join us. I think that this is such important information to know, and I think that people really just don't understand the ability that they have when it comes to planning, and I'm very passionate about it and educating people to make sure that they know that they can actually put plans in place. So we are going to try and stick to our time frame tonight to be done by about 7:45 for you. So we're going to leave time at the end for some questions. Also, if you do have any questions that come up, you are more than welcome to ask them. You can use the chat window to put your questions in there, and we can get to those, or we will get to them at the end. So first, I'm going to go ahead and start off by introducing Chad and let Chad talk a little bit about himself.
Great. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Krista, and thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. We are thrilled that you're here. We hope that tonight will be insightful, thought-provoking, and educational, and that is our purpose tonight. As Krista mentioned, we want to be sensitive to your time, so we really want to cover all the information that we have to share, and we'll certainly still provide a time for questions and answers at the conclusion of the presentation. Of course, we'd be more than happy to connect with you offline as well. Krista, if you could advance to the next slide, please. Mm-hmm. So just a little bit about our firm. Certainly for any of our clients who are joining the call, thank you. We are so grateful for your partnership and the opportunity to serve you and your personal and business interests. If you are not part of our family, we certainly would welcome that opportunity. But we're real proud of our partnership with Krista, her firm, and the local community. So we've been in business since 2008. We are a comprehensive insurance and financial services firm practicing in all areas of personal and commercial insurance, as well as financial services. It says it best right here. Our primary mission is centered entirely on being agents, advisors, and friends to all stakeholders, starting, of course, with our clientele. And our goal and our mission is to cultivate lasting relationships while delivering world-class service and insurance and financial-based products. So a few of our accolades are featured here, but we attribute all of our success to our clients and our partners, and we're just very grateful for the opportunity to be here with you tonight. So with that, Krista, I will turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I appreciate the opportunity to work with you on this, and I know it's been in the making for us to have this webinar, so I do appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so my name is Krista Hermance, and I am an estate planning attorney. Our firm is really about teaching people how to put plans in place to be able to protect their family. We are a very family-oriented firm, and that's really the basis of what our practice is built from, is just making that kind of family-centric. And it's making sure that people know that they have the ability to put plans in place. We have 3 offices. Our offices are in Ventura, Westlake Village, Santa Clarita, and we also offer virtually, which was great when nobody could meet in person. We already had the systems to be able to do everything virtually. So we do work with clients throughout the state. I have pictured here 2 of our offices because we do have very kid-friendly offices. 6 areas of planning, is that what you see?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you are still with us, I apologize again for that technical difficulty, but I will try and make up for it here. So, okay, so the 6 areas that we're going to be talking about tonight are power of attorneys. What is an advanced healthcare directive and HIPAA authorization? What is a will? What is life insurance? How does life insurance work? Revocable living trust. And then if you have minor children, we'll talk about guardian nominations for those minor children, and we look at both short-term and long-term guardian nominations. Okay, so serious question, and I know that this is really kind of just jumping into it. But what happens when you don't have a plan in place when you pass away? So there's a few different areas that we look at. So if you have minor children, the issue of guardianship. You know, is there another parent that's alive? Did something happen to both parents? Are there any documentations in place that actually say what would happen to your kids? Or if you didn't have any planning or any legal documents in place, then you have a court potentially deciding for you without any input from you. That's one of the really big scary things when it comes to estate planning with minor kids is without any plan in place, you have no say. And that's really one of the things that I try and tell people and make sure that they understand that I know it's scary and people don't want to do it, but without any input from you, a court would have no idea who you would actually want. Another issue is you have incapacity. If something happened and you didn't have the ability, the mental capacity to be able to make decisions for yourself, either financial or healthcare, then it could be that somebody from your family would have to go to court and get what's called a conservatorship. And this conservatorship is where the court would identify somebody to be able to manage those aspects of your life for you. And the way that we prevent this is by having planning documents in place that would say to a court that if something happens, this is who you would want to be able to make these decisions for you. I've seen some horrible cases where people were in a situation that they were incapacitated and who you would probably think they would want, the court wouldn't allow. And so this allows you to be able to say, this is who you would want, right? All the stuff that we're doing is trying to prevent court intervention or put is least the ability to not have to go to court, right? To keep it out of court, to keep it private, which keeps costs down. It keeps things from getting messy. The other big one that most people are familiar with is that when somebody passes away, their assets have to go through what's called probate court. Probate court in California is very expensive. It's all set by statutory fees. And it's a long process and it's completely public. And people don't really understand what probate court is and how it relates to estate planning. And so that's things that I am going to talk about today. Okay, so reasons you want to avoid probate court is it's a long process. So right now, especially with COVID, we are seeing an increase in the time it actually takes to start the probate proceeding. So in Los Angeles, for example, we have cases that are getting set in February right now, which means that people actually can't start going through their loved one's stuff and starting to go through assets and doing things and selling a house until that initial court hearing. And so it's 1 to 2 years from that time that it could take. So it's very long. It's also public. Anybody can go to the courthouse, pull the records, find out what you own, who you owe money to, and who your beneficiaries are. It's also very expensive. And I always like to kind of give you an idea from the expense perspective, because generally when you hear about estate planning, people are like, oh, it's really expensive, but the cost of doing estate planning compared to the cost of actually having to go through probate it's such a fraction of that cost for probate that I really want you to have an idea. So if you have a gross estate, and your gross estate is basically, all of the stuff that you have in your name personally, right, that you hold. So let's say you own a home in California with a fair market value of $490,000. It's not how much you owe or how much equity you have in the house, but actually how much the house would sell for is what the gross estate is going to look at. So $490,000, and then let's say you had about $10,000 in various bank accounts, savings accounts, checking accounts. So that leaves your probate estate at about $500,000, just to kind of make it easy and round those numbers. So like I said, fees for probate court are set by statute. So you have attorney fees and personal representative fees of about $26,000, okay? And then costs on top of that of about $2,000. So for that 1 to 2 year process, for those assets where somebody passes away that has to go through probate court, you're looking at about $28,000 in fees, okay? And this can be avoided, right? This is what we do from a planning perspective, is try and avoid this. The other side of that is when it comes to minor kids. If there's no planning documents in place, the court doesn't know what your wishes are, how you would want money distributed to your kids. So it may not be what you would want. And children, so in California, anyone under the age of 18 is a minor, they can't actually receive that money. And so if they are a minor when they receive that money, then that money would go through the court system where they would get all of it when they turn 18, okay? And for some life insurance policies, they're very large. And for a minor child to get that life insurance policy at a young age and then for it to wait for them until they're 18, it just could be devastating for the child. In an already really horrible situation that they would be in, okay? Okay, so when we look at planning, there's kind of these different areas where you can, or these different timeframes that you could do planning. So we look at you being in a state of wellness, right? If you have the ability now that you have the mental capacity to make decisions for yourself, to be able to know what's going on, to get this planning documents in place, this is the perfect time for when you should be doing your planning, this kind of pre-planning stage. Because what happens is some type of event, this incapacitating event, it could be a car accident, it could be a heart attack, it could be a stroke, something that then has this ability to where you don't have the mental capacity to make decisions for yourself. That's when families go into crisis planning. That's when court intervention is needed to try and get court involvement so that people can access bank accounts, right, to make medical decisions, to be able to do things for that family member that doesn't have those planning documents in place. So when we're looking at planning, is we are trying to get all of that planning done for people while they're in that pre-planning stage. Okay, the first document is a power of attorney. So this is basically just a legal document that gives your agent the ability to make financial decisions on your behalf if you are unable to do so. So going to the bank, paying your mortgage, filing tax returns, going to the post office, anything that they would essentially be able to just step into your shoes and be able to handle on your behalf if you are unable to do so. When you do a power of attorney, you get to pick your own agent. So it's somebody that you trust to be able to make those decisions for you. When you have a power of attorney document, it doesn't take away your control. It just gives them the ability to help manage while you are incapacitated. You're not losing any rights. You're not losing any control. One of the things that I do like about California is we have what's called a springing power of attorney. So when you have a power of attorney document, you can say, well, I don't want it to be effective right now because I'm in good health. I can actually have it what's called spring into effect upon incapacity. So only if there was some type of event that happened would this power of attorney then kick in. You also have the ability to identify backup agents. And one of the kind of things that I'm going to keep reiterating throughout this is always having a backup plan, right? Agents that you identify, having backups to those agents, and then backups. Okay, again, if you have any questions throughout, if you can put those in the chat. I can't see the chat window right now, and I don't want to mess with the technology at this moment, so I will try and get to those at the end. Okay, so next is the Advanced Healthcare Directive. So this is very similar to the power of attorney document, but what it allows you to do is to identify an agent to be able to make healthcare decisions on your behalf. If something were to happen and you were to become incapacitated. Without having this document, your loved ones may be denied the ability to get medical information for you or be able to make decisions. One of the very, very famous cases is the Terry Schiavo case. And this was a case where she was young, she was 26 years old, newly married, and she had a stroke. And they tried for weeks to bring her back to a state of normal, and they never were able to. And she was at that point listed in a persistent vegetative state. And her husband wanted to take her off life support, and her parents did not. And so then what ensued was about 13 years of legal battles. And at the end of that period, her husband did end up prevailing, and she was taken off life support and passed away shortly thereafter. So it was not having this document or any kind of document that says what you would want, that would tell doctors what you want, to be able to say, these are what my wishes are. Because we don't know what her wishes were, because she had never been able to communicate those, right? She had never been able to write them down and make them legal. And it was just speculation at that point that her parents said it was one thing and her husband said it was another. But there was nothing legally in writing that said that for the court to be able to say, this is what she wants. So an Advanced Healthcare Directive, some people know this as a living will. I get that a lot. When they say, oh, I need a living will, that's what an Advanced Healthcare Directive is saying what your medical decisions are. There's also certain end-of-life decisions in an Advanced Healthcare Directive that you would be able to identify, like if you wanted to be buried or cremated, do you want prolonged life support with extreme measures, or would you want to be taken off? Did you want to do any type of organ donation? So these are all kind of questions that we go through on that document. A HIPAA authorization on the other side of that is another kind of, if you go to the doctors anytime, there's generally you see anything that's related to HIPAA where you have to sign a waiver basically saying that your healthcare is protected, the information is protected. And so this HIPAA authorization allows you to say, well, these are people that if I was incapacitated and couldn't give them permission, I would want them to be able to talk to doctors, get medical records, find out what was going on. You can also identify backup agents in your healthcare directive. Okay, next is your will. So this document is probably the most common known legal document when it comes to estate planning. And a will is a legal document where you give certain instructions to be carried out after you pass away. In the will, you can identify how you want your stuff distributed. Where do you want your money or property to go to? It also allows you to identify guardians for your minor children if you do have minor children. When somebody passes away, a will is filed with the probate court, and therefore, again, it's a public document. So anybody can go pull it and find out what's going on with your estate. You see this a lot, like with TMZ, where a celebrity passes away and they will publish what is going on with their estate because the will is a public document. So if somebody passes away and they do not have a will in California, it's distributed to what we call intestate law. And it's basically California's way of saying, if you pass away without any instructions, it's going to go these are how things are distributed in various ways. And it may be what you would want, but it may not be. And I've seen recently, just with a lot more probate cases that we've been handling, people not having planning documents in place, and then maybe having a child from a previous marriage that they're, they haven't talked to that child in 40 years. Well, that child is still a child. And without any legal documents in place, they may get some of your estate, and that might not have been your intention. So that's why it's really important to have these types of documents in place. One of the biggest myths I hear about wills is that it avoids probate court, and that is just not true. All a will does is it tells the probate court how you want your stuff distributed. It guarantees probate court because you still have all of these assets in your name, so it's not going to avoid that whole probate court process. It's not going to avoid those statutory fees that come with probate court. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Chad to talk a little bit about estate planning with life insurance.
Thank you, Krista. So now we're going to move on to everyone's favorite topic, which is, of course, life insurance. I, too, have a myth that I'd like to feature, which life insurance. What is it? What is it known for? And I personally have adopted a different view and different nomenclature and I'd encourage you all to do the same, that the life insurance, you shouldn't view it in those words. You really should substitute the word life for the word love. Life insurance, you might make the argument, and I will tonight, that it really is love insurance. And you may very well broaden that statement by continuing that it's the ultimate gift of love. And what do I really mean by that? It really comes down to the power of planning. If you make planning a priority, your estate, but more importantly, those that will live beyond you, will be well taken care of. And the goals that you have in mind today, after your passing, are certainly equally important. So with the right estate and life insurance strategy, because those two are certainly companion components to an overall estate plan in many cases, you have the ability to really truly safeguard, and that word is paramount, and I want to underscore that. Safeguard who and what you care most about to ensure that your goals are met while you are here today, and of course beyond when you're no longer here. And life insurance is widely misunderstood. It is overly complex unnecessarily, and our role is helping our clients plan properly, plan suitably, and demystifying the products and the process. But ultimately, life insurance is known really for one thing, and that's, you might label it as death insurance. But it really is a very powerful and versatile tool that really provides financial confidence. And as you see, as I have in this slide here, not just financial confidence for you, but more importantly, perhaps the financial confidence of the people in your personal and professional life who depend on you and that you will leave behind. So one of the things that a statement that I did not coin, but I've heard it throughout my career, is that you don't entertain the idea, the notion of buying life insurance conceptually because you're planning for your death or because you acknowledge your mortality, but rather because not that it's you that's going to pass, but it's because those that you love and care for are going to live. And that, I think, helps put it in really proper context to understand who is this really for. And it brings us back to my opening remarks about it's not life insurance, it's love insurance. Krista, if you could advance to the next slide, please. So what is love insurance? What is life insurance? Well, the reality is it's simply the form of leverage. We borrow and leverage capital and financial resources in a variety of ways, whether it's your home mortgage, whether it's the loan to purchase a vehicle, to purchase a business or a business asset. All it is, life insurance is exactly the same, and it shares a lot of the same commonalities. Simply put, it provides a source of cash liquidity to your family or other defined beneficiaries when you're no longer here. And that's really it. And one of the things I'm going to talk about momentarily is that we view it as intelligent leverage. You might make the argument again that pursuing a home mortgage is intelligent leverage. You're taking out a cost-effective loan to have access to a bank's money so that you can buy a primary home, for example. Life insurance is the same idea. It's the cost-effective way to access capital so that you can utilize that cash to execute upon your wishes. And really, if we break it down into two distinct life phases, the first phase for younger families is what we commonly refer to in financial planning as the accumulation phase. And a lot of the key factors there is a lot of course, young families with young children. You certainly are emerging professionals and working towards reaching the peak of your professional life, both in stature, status, and income. Presumably for the average family, of course, an average working family, you'll have a home mortgage in play. You'll have the need to educate children, whether that's through public institutional systems or perhaps private. And typically the primary motive with love insurance or life insurance, I'll use the terms interchangeably, is this notion that if God forbid you should pass away prematurely, there's a need to replace income that your family or perhaps, of course, even yourself and your estate is dependent upon. You might make the argument that your income is perhaps your most important and valuable asset. And if that were to turn off overnight, typically for most people, the impact would be devastating, especially again, for any loved ones who depend on that income. But what I love about life insurance is not static. There's typically a need for life insurance throughout every phase of life and pretty much for every profile of individual. But as you move into maturity, into what we call the protection or the distribution phase of life, you see that obviously if these key factors evolve, perhaps the children are in college now and perhaps graduating out of college, beginning their own independent adulthoods. We would hope minimize levels of debt. You might perhaps be paying off and satisfying the mortgage obligation. Now, instead of, we're talking about generating income through earned income or other sources, we're now talking about preservation with retirement income. And now you start thinking about this next chapter in your life, and you have to start confronting your mortality. Think about what are your goals? Are you interested in transferring your wealth and leaving a legacy? Are you interested, or is there a need to create a continuity plan for a business? This primary objective now typically evolves from income replacement to now leveraging life insurance with tax efficiency. And Chris, if you could advance to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, I discussed this a short time ago, but here we have it in written form that intelligent leverage defined is, again, just cost-effective access to an external use or an external source of capital. And that's really it. And it's really that simple. For pennies on the dollar, you can get access to somebody else's money. And it sounds pretty good, perhaps, and when you put it and portray it in that way. But as I mentioned, it's a very powerful vehicle. And here are some of the things that I wanted to highlight that can help perhaps enhance your overall estate plan, as well as your overall financial strategies throughout the various stages of life. And you see, as I put here, it's no longer this concept of death insurance. Life insurance can do so much more and satisfy so many more broad objectives and goals for all sorts of people and families and business, that there's just so much there to offer. And oftentimes we find that people need the expertise of a professional to lead them through and help them identify what the right strategy is to directly support whatever the goals may be. So some of the strategic uses and applications of life insurance are what we featured here. It's a very powerful tool that enables you to leave perhaps a lasting legacy to your family and future generations. Most importantly, tax effectively. Ensure the continuity of a business perhaps that you've built. Effectively transfer ownership of a business. Bestow philanthropic impact giving far more profoundly and efficiently. Provide estate tax liquidity for affluent families and estates. There's also an application to help supplement retirement income, and not to mention some of the more commonly known applications, which would include final expenses, funeral costs, loan taxes, and estate settlement expenses. Krista, if you could advance the next slide, please. So some of the defining benefits of life insurance is some of the items that I've highlighted here. And what I want to point out before I specifically mention them is that life insurance enjoys some very specific characteristics and features that you literally cannot find with any other vehicle. And because of that, it is very, very worthy to be applied in a variety of planning scenarios. And it's important for people to understand that it's not just an insurance product for the purposes of providing a death benefit. It has the potential to offer so much more, particularly with respect to tax efficiency and tax favored treatment. So let me just highlight some of the things that we have identified here. We talked about intelligent leverage. We've talked about briefly the death benefit, of course, which is tax advantage per the IRS codes. It provides and offers diversification that's worthy of its own asset class. Life insurance doesn't have to just be insurance. And being in the insurance profession, I can tell you that insurance, we're well aware, is not everyone's favorite product that you own. But life insurance enjoys some additional features where you can actually view it not just as an insurance product, but as an asset. And I'm happy to talk more about that with folks as part of our planning processes. Tax deferred growth potential of cash value, attractive rates of return on those cash values, contractual guarantees where we can take variability out of the equation entirely, and then living benefits that you've seen a lot more momentum around this notion of living benefits, that life insurance, people don't necessarily just want to have life insurance for the sake of knowing that other people will profit upon their demise, but that there's actually ways to utilize and have these life insurance contracts generate living benefits while you're still alive. The most common and probably one of the most popular leading applications of that would be the emergence of long-term care riders, where you can actually plan for the risk of long-term care, as well as the risk or obvious, as people would say, the obvious and ultimate result in life, which is your passing. It provides the opportunity to generate tax-favored income, and it also proves a very powerful way to serve as a savings vehicle. And getting access to that cash value can serve as an important source of an emergency fund or other needed capital throughout your life when those situations potentially emerge. Okay, and Krista, if you could advance, I believe I'm turning it back over to you now.
Yes, you are. Thank you, Chad. Okay, so the next estate planning tool that we use is a revocable living trust. And this is probably the most common tool that we use for families with planning because it provides the most protection. It allows you so much control. It just has so many benefits. I'm going to go through some of those here with you. So what is a trust? A trust is basically just an agreement where you as the grantor, which is the creator of the trust, put specific instructions in writing to the trustee, which is the person who agrees to hold legal title to all of the assets in your trust, and they do this for the benefit of your beneficiaries. So while you are alive, when you have a revocable living trust, you are all three of those roles, meaning you are the grantor, you created it, you are the trustee, meaning you are in complete control over all of the assets in your trust, and you also the beneficiary. It's all your stuff. It's there for you to be able to use and enjoy. When somebody passes away, the instructions that are in the trust provided to the trustee for them to follow. So they have very specific things on what they are supposed to do to be able to make sure that things are distributed according to their plan. Generally, when you have a trust, there is no court involvement. So this is what we call a probate avoidance tool. It allows, so everything I talked about in probate before where, probate's very expensive, it's very long, this is avoiding that process by having a trust in place. One of the things I hear when people, talk about trust, they say, oh, it's just for the wealthy, Bill Gates needs a trust, but, I'm not Bill Gates level. That is not true. Trusts are for any family that wants to put a plan in place to protect their family, okay, because it's going to provide so many benefits, and you don't need a lot of assets to have a trust. So what are some of the benefits? Well, when you have a trust, it allows you to set up sub-trusts. So if you have minor children, or if you have children that aren't let's say over 35, maybe they're in college, you can set up sub-trusts for your children that if something were to happen, rather than the kids receiving everything at 18 going through the court system, if it went through the trust, then these sub-trusts could be created to distribute money to them at maybe 25, 30, 35. Okay. It also allows you to have protections in place to protect your children's inheritance from creditors, from predators, and divorce. So California is a community property state. We see it all the time where people will get an inheritance and they will take that money and they will commingle it with their spouse, and then it's in that joint checking account, and then a few years later there's a divorce, and then they get half that money. Whereas having it in a trust would help keep that protected. When you have a trust, you can also choose a trustee to manage the finances on your behalf if something happens to you and to the other person in the trust, if you are married or if you're single and it's just a single person trust. But a lot of times the families that I work with that have young kids, they like this because maybe they love the guardians they've chosen for their kids and they're amazing, but they're horrible with money. So they can actually choose a different person to manage the money, a different, what we call trustee, to manage the trust portion. So it's almost like a check and a balance when it comes to estate planning, that the guardians manage, raising the children, and the trustee would manage the trust for the money for the kids. Okay, so it keeps it separate. One of the other really great things, and this is where it ties into the life insurance with Chad that he was just talking about, is having a trust allows you the ability to list the life insurance as a beneficiary of your trust, so that if something were to happen, let's say you were married and something happened to both parents, then you could have your trust as what we call a backup beneficiary, that money would then go into trust to be distributed how you would want. So maybe if you had minor kids, it would go to the kids at 25, 30, 35, rather than everything to the kids through the court system at 18. Okay. Okay. The last planning tool that I'm going to mention is guardian nomination. So this is if you have children that are under the age of 18, definitely recommending that you have some type of guardian nomination in there. And this is where you are able to choose guardians that share your same parenting styles. They have the same values as you. They will provide the less love, education, and support for your children that they can. I know it's hard to choose, and a lot of times I find that people can't do estate planning because they can't decide on this. But remember, if you can't do this, if something happened, the court would have no idea who you would actually want. And so even getting something is better than nothing, okay? When you're doing guardian nominations, it's important to make sure that you list alternates, right? Having that backup in there. So I recommend having at least 2 alternates listed when you're naming guardians for your children. You never know what season of life somebody's going to be in. And what if at the point that they needed to step in as guardian, they were going through cancer treatment, or somebody in their family was, and they couldn't take on your children while handling their own family. So that's why it's so important to make sure you have those backups. When you're choosing guardian nomination, you also want to make sure you are documenting your wishes very specifically. So maybe you have guardians that you want, where maybe it's your sister and your brother-in-law. But if something happened to your sister, you wouldn't necessarily want your brother-in-law to be the guardian by himself. So you can actually put in your guardian nomination that you would want them to act together, but if something happened to sister, brother-in-law wouldn't be guardian by himself, and then it would go to your backup that you have listed next. Okay, so when you're working through these nominations, you can put those very specific instructions in writing. Another really important thing that a lot of people don't think about is nominating short-term guardians for your kids. These are family or friends that are close by, within 30 minutes, that if something happens, they could be there for your kids. The biggest thing that we're trying to prevent here is that if something were to happen and there was no guardians that were able to watch the kids, that Child Protective Services wouldn't come in and remove the children from the home and put them in foster care until family was able to get to them. I find this so important for families that are maybe transplants, where they've moved to a new place for a job, they don't know anybody, and they have family, in a different state or across the country or even in another country, and that does happen a lot. So it's important to make sure you have people identified that are close by that can take your kids in an emergency situation. And again, without this documentation in place, a judge would have no idea who you would actually want, and that's why it's so important just to get something in writing. It's never going to be perfect, but it'll at least be something. Okay, so who needs planning documents? I just put my hand close to my computer. I have to stop doing that or I'm going to knock it over again. So who needs planning documents? So anybody over the age of 18, but especially if you have minor children and or own a home. You know, the scenario that I gave you before where we talked about the cost of probate, that's if you own a house in California, and it doesn't have to be paid off. It's just, that's the fair market value of the house. So anybody that, again, has minor children or owns a home should have some type of estate planning in place. One thing I do want to provide to you guys is a free planning guide, and I will be providing that to Chad's team to be able to send that to you guys in an email tomorrow. And this is actually right here, a digital copy that I will send to you, where it really just goes through all of the instructions, different things to kind of think about, and the ability to go in and write in the worksheet what your choices are. So it's helping you to make those decisions. Okay, so you guys will get that tomorrow. So what is our estate planning process? So to get started, we would send you a worksheet to complete online. Everything we do is the most advanced technology that we can find just to make things easier. Then we would have what we call a virtual family planning assessment, where we go through, you know, what would happen without a plan in place, and really just kind of educate you on that. Generally that is $149, but we do waive that fee for you guys attending this seminar. And then if you want to move forward, we would design a plan that would help you resolve all of those issues that potentially came up in that family planning assessment. So just to make sure that you are comfortable, that you have that peace of mind knowing that if something happens, your wishes are legally documented and you know what would happen. The whole process takes about 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, depending on time frame, and to get that plan in place. Okay, I do want to offer you guys a discount also just for attending tonight. So if you are interested, I want to make sure you guys get $200 off a trust package. But in order to get that $200 off, you need to book a family planning assessment within the next 24 hours. And it's just making sure that, you know, if you can't get it booked, just send me a message and let me know you're interested, and I can try and get that extended for you. But it's just making sure that we kind of have that set in stone, as we do have other things that are planned kind of throughout the month. And if you are ready to book, you can go to our website, hermanslaw.com, and in the upper right-hand corner, you can book an appointment right up there and get that scheduled. Again, everything is pretty much done online to make things easy for you. And Chad?
Yes, thanks, Krista. That's wonderful. So we're coming up on the allotted time that we had planned for. There is a video that I think brings this all to life. And Krista, I was going to ask you if you could go to this URL, and I'd like to make an attempt. We did try this, and I believe it should work just fine for the audience. That link right there, and I'd like to play it for everyone. It's a short 2-minute video, but it gives life, and it allows us to really, I think for most of us, relate to everything we've discussed, because clearly we've thrown a lot of technical information that certainly is very educational in nature, but I think a video like this makes it real.
It will not let me click on it, so let me see if I can. Because it's in presentation mode.
I'll tell you why we're getting this video up here, and hopefully we can. If not, there is the URL you can access later. This is by far one of the most powerful videos I share with my clients daily, and I think it's one of the best produced videos I've seen, and that's why I wanted to share it with you all.
Okay, let me see if I can. Can you hear it?
You can hear it. Oh, I think we lost your audio.
I didn't expect to die at such a young age. To think getting life insurance was unrealistic things to do.
Chris, I don't think we can
Sure did. I never got around to doing it.
Can you not see the video?
No. I think we need to just change the screen share. I can share it here. We can give it a try.
I can see it, but I can't hear it.
Okay. we'll just go ahead.
We'll use my audio and your video.
Figures.
I still don't hear any audio, Chad.
No, okay. Okay, well, let's see, we've got a chat here. We'll include the link. You know, we gave it our best effort here. So we'll include the link as well in the follow-up materials. And I would encourage everyone to spend the 2 minutes and watch it. Really the idea here with all this information, as well as a video like this, is to inspire action, right? We want to be a resource, Krista's firm, our firm, if we can. But at a minimum, if we can inspire action for you all to potentially plan and plan well for you and your families and your businesses and the things that you hold dearest in life, we hope that a presentation like this will be the catalyst to help you move that needle forward and pursue it. So what I'll do, aside from the video, to Krista's point with her consultation, if we can be a resource on the subject of life insurance, we invite and welcome you at any point in time. I think perhaps aside from the video, the last slide with the last quote, I feel is also appropriate, Krista. If you here it is, a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. Krista and I both see the procrastination. It's a basic human nature. And I've seen it far too often where people plan to take action on these subjects for years, in fact, in some cases, decades. And sometimes they're just fortunate, and other times they're not, where they're unable to take action in time before the inevitable. And we care about you, we care about your families. We've seen these examples day in and day out. And so if we can help people take action appropriately, we've done our job, and we think we've done it well and a good service.
Okay, so let's go ahead and take some questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And the first question that I see is, do you need a will and a trust? And if you have any questions, please go ahead and get those into the chat, and we will try and get to those for you. So that is a great question. So when we look at estate planning, it isn't just about having a will or just about having a trust. This is actually our estate planning binder that we do for our clients. And it comes with all of these important planning documents because it's not just one, right? It isn't just a will, it isn't just a trust alone. They work together to make sure that you have a plan in place. And so depending on what your situation is and depending on what you need, if you have a trust, you will also have a will to go with it. If you have a will, you may not need a trust depending on what your situation is. But if you have a trust, you will also need a will for it with it. Okay, I think the next question, Chad, was talking about how much life insurance do you need?
Sure. So the answer to that question is going to vary. There's certainly different approaches to come to the right answer that's most suitable. It is based on individual circumstances. There are technical approaches using software and calculators, and there's also just different methodologies to arrive at the right number. We also have to be mindful and sensitive to costs and expense. And so in actuality, it's part of the planning process, and we can answer that on an individual basis.
Okay, thank you. So if you have a question, please get those into the chat, and we will be happy to answer those for you. And if you need to leave us because we have gone, it's just a couple minutes over. Thank you again for joining us. And I'm going to stay on, and Chad, I think you will too, stay on and continue to answer questions for people.
Yes, we have another one here. A question of
yes.
what is the total cost for a comprehensive estate plan, incorporating the discount, of course?
Yes. Okay, so I am very transparent with pricing. I think that it's important for people to know exactly what it is that they're getting for the price. I have our prices listed on our website, so you're more than welcome to go look there as well. But our basic estate planning package, which comes with a trust, a will, advanced healthcare directive, power of attorney, advanced healthcare directive, it comes in this beautiful binder with a bunch of other supporting documents, is $2,995. So with that discount, it would be $2,795.
Awesome. And then another question was raised here too about what happens when you have a husband and a wife and one spouse passes away. If there's a concern, and we see this often with secondary marriages and perhaps more, how do you protect the children from perhaps the first marriage if the surviving spouse gets remarried?
That is a very great question, and I do try and educate people on that because I see it where it happens to a lot of people. And so when we go through the planning stage and we design your plan, we ask a series of questions that will help determine what kind of plan is the best for you. And we can actually put planning in your trust that would essentially put those protections in there for remarriage to make sure that if something happened and one of the spouses passed away, that if there was a remarriage, a prenuptial agreement would be required to make sure that that money was there for the benefit of the children and it would be used for the kids and couldn't be distributed to a new spouse or even creditors if there was a lawsuit. And so there's certain protections we can put in place for that. Great question.
Definitely. Are there any other questions from the audience? Give it a moment here.
One thing I will mention, just because I know sometimes this is a question that comes up a lot, is regarding houses. So if you own your home, and again, having a mortgage is fine. What we essentially do is you have your house that you own in your name, or you and your spouse, and we put you as the trustees of your trust when you own that. If you were to buy a new house in the future, you don't have to come back to me every time you buy a new house, right? All you're going to do is with your estate plan that you get what we call a certificate of trust. And that certificate of trust says you have this trust. And you can give it to your mortgage broker or lender and say, here, we have a trust, just put it into our trust. And then as you continue to get older and you accumulate wealth and you buy houses, you can just put your house right into your trust. You don't need to come back to us or get it updated every time you do that. Same thing if you sell your house, you just sell it as the trustee of your trust because you are in control over all of your stuff. You don't need to come back and get it updated every time you make that change. And I see this a lot right now with the housing market being the way it is and with refinances, so I'd like to make sure that's addressed.
That's a great point. Okay, great. Well, I'm not seeing any additional questions come up here. So I'll take an opportunity to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I take that back. Oh, we got a thank you and we appreciate that. But I'll conclude my remarks just by inviting us to utilize us as a resource. What I mean by that is not to transact business, but if Krista and I'm speaking on her behalf and I hope she concurs, but if we can be a resource to you and an educational resource, we're happy to do it. We want to be good stewards, and we're just happy that we're here being given the opportunity to be that resource. So we'll send follow-up information via email. Krista, I'll allow you to conclude.
Yeah, no, I think you said it. Again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight, and you should be getting an email tomorrow with some information from tonight with some handouts, as well as a link to schedule a meeting if you do want to get a plan in place. So thank you again.
Krista, thank you. Thank you, everyone. With that, we'll conclude for the evening. Just a few minutes behind schedule. Have a wonderful evening.
Too bad. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.